Right, so the first thing, and I'll get everyone to do this now, if we create a Word doc, and I'm going to call it modular testing. Oops. Yeah, I've that as my title. Right, the way to organise this, to make it easier to follow, is you've got a number of modules, and that all of you, no matter what type of project you're doing, you're going to have modules. If you look at the game template, we've got an assets module, we've got that, but I'll explain what that is at a later date. General logic, general use, GM, helpers, input, etc. What we're going to do is we're going to organise this by module and subroutine. Okay, so I'm first of all, if I how does my sound work on this? Oh, it's HDMI, isn't it? No, I can't disable the sound, so you're all going to get a sound problem. I'll have to do a different mistake. Right, so let's say I'm doing my title screen. Okay, and I'll do a simple mistake. Right. If I just run this, just to show you, the basic, what I've done is I've done loads of bits, like there's a loading thing, you can change all that. I've got a scrolling background, and I've got some sprite. I haven't got a proper graphics driver on this computer anymore, so you can see it's running like a dog, even though there's nothing happening hardly. I've tried to fix it, and I can't even get it to install, so I don't know what's happened. Right, so let's say on my title screen, it's got a timer on it. Let's say I'm messing about with this, and I've set the timer to 3 seconds. So I'm just doing it, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, right, okay, title screen's looking good. Oh, hang on a minute, it's jumping to the high score too quick. So I can't show a screenshot of that, but I can still describe it. So when I hunt down the bug, I look at it and I say, right, well, hang on a minute, it's down to this line. So this is in the title module, but it's in the start title subroutine. So in my little Word document, I'm going to have title, module title.cs. Okay, I'll make that a heading. Use headings wisely. And this is going to be, what was it, start title? Start title. So subroutine. I can't type when I'm leaning over like this, I don't know why. Start title. And I'm going to say what the problem is. So issue, and it is goes to high score display too quick. Display. Word is really funny with some of the words that it says are not right in the dictionary. High score, I would have thought high score was a word, but I don't like it. Goes to high score too quick. Right. What we're looking at is resolution. How do we fix it? Alright, now in order to explain how I'm fixing this, I've got to show the code. So I'm going to take that line, and I'm going to copy it into here. What is going on? Right, thank you. I'm going to scroll bar back. Right, so it's this line of code that's at fault. And I can say that I'd set the event to trigger after 3 seconds. Oops, 3 seconds. Seconds, whatever they are. Okay, fixed it by adjusting timer, and I can show the resolution. So that's a really simple one. I don't want loads like that. Alright, and I can show the code corrected. So that's evidence of that. I might have another problem in this subroutine. So let me go back. Let's do something weirder. Now let's do something. If I do one that isn't to do with that, if I go into my assets, I'm going to do something now where I don't create the background tile, which would be off the back of that. Right, if I run it now, it'll run and be quite happy and it'll load everything, but I'll get this crash. Okay. Now I've actually got some help. I've thrown an exception here from the game engine and said the tile map you attempted to add, so when I do this bit, this is telling the tile map manager to start displaying a background, a tile map. But it's saying it's null. So this is a nice one. You've got an error message that's come out of my engine, but you might get error messages that come from Visual Studio anyway, okay, in the environment. So I can show that. So if I do a print screen of that, remember Alt print screen gives you just the active window. So I'm going to put that in. So I'm going to put this under start tile. So I'm going to leave this as another issue. Okay, so I can do that. If I wanted the whole context, so I wanted that, I'll have to do print screen and then paste the whole thing in and crop it, unfortunately. Nothing you can do about that using the old crop tool. This is so much better than it ever was, this crop tool. It used to be awful in Word. Okay, so you can show the whole context. We're looking at the detail, so for me that would be poor. So I'm going to do that. Make sure I'm really just showing what I'm trying to illustrate. Make sure it's big enough. That's miles too big, doesn't need to be that big. Okay, now I've said I'll put this down as a problem with start title because that's where the error happened, but the error isn't in that subroutine. So my resolution for this one is to look back through the code, and this is how I'd fix this. I'd say, okay, I've got a null value here, so let's find all the references and look for all the references to that value. So I've got blah blah blah, and I'm going to go through each one of these lines and see if it helps me. So I've got, thank you, tile maps up 4 times there in that, so that looks okay. These are the worst types of bugs. I've got a subroutine that creates the tile map. It looks like it works. Okay, there are no issues with that. So going back to my find results, I've got that line. Let me lock that on. So that line's where I define space for tile map. That's the line that crashed where I tried to add it. That's where I did the scrolling for it. That is not going to help me, any of that. Okay, so I go right back and I say, right, okay, let's check I loaded the graphic for it. So in my assets code, I'm looking at it. This is where I load graphics. Okay, so I'm saying add a texture from this PNG base textures and then run this subroutine when it's loaded, which is how we have to do it because it happens in the background so we can get on with other stuff. Okay, now here's the one to do with the landscape, and it runs this subroutine, so I better go and explore this. So I look at it, oh, stupidly commented that line out, or I might have forgot to run that subroutine. Do you remember a common thing that you lot did last year? created subroutines, and then went, it don't work, because you haven't run the subroutine. That was like a number one. That was it. It was either that, or well, no, I think that was the number one after spelling mistakes. The number one was creating subroutines, which was fine, but then not running them. So you could say, oh, I forgot to run the subroutine that created the tile map once the texture was loaded, and that would be your resolution for that. And you can show that. So you could take the whole bit of code, put it in Word. You might need to like resize fonts and things for this. So needed to run subroutine to create tile map once texture loaded. Okay. So this is what I need to do. I'm not asking you, and this is very important, I'm not asking you to document every single bloody thing that breaks. You will spend all your time documenting what's broken. Okay? But I want to be able to, at the end of this unit, your project, I want to be able to look back and I want to be able to see, I don't know, 10, 12 pages of this that show me and the examiner that you have actually developed this, that you didn't. Have you ever done projects before where you had to test something at the end when you finished it? Yeah? And you go, success, 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 everything works. Which leaves you under no idea whether you actually did anything. You got a product at the end, but you might just copied it off somebody. Okay? What we want to show is that, yeah, it ain't simple what I've done, and I've had lots of issues, but I've been fixing these issues. It might be that sometimes you get a problem and you can't find a resolution, so you have to have another way around it. You might have to abandon something. That's not a problem. Write it up, it can go in the evaluation. So when you're like saying, have I met the success of my project, there might be certain things that we say, oh no, a bit complicated. You know, the way we thought it was going to work isn't going to work. So we have to change it. It may be you abandon something completely, but you find another way of doing it. Or you like rejig an idea. Okay, which is probably going to happen a lot for yours, I think. Definitely go. Okay, but this is important. So when you're doing your scripts, you might find that you've got object issues and things like that to start with. You know, like, oh, not loading object, null objects and all that sort of stuff. But when you're doing your scripts for controlling your menus and controlling your characters and all the generating objects dynamically and stuff, you're going to come into this, aren't you? Okay, you're going to have lots of yours major ones are going to be camera issues and pointing in the right direction and making sure we can see the bit we want to see and all that sort of stuff. But you can document all that. The web people, like I say, there's going to be lots of layout issues, but you are going to have, hilariously, lots of database issues. Okay, you'll get errors saying, yeah, SQL not formatted properly, and that'll be it. And then you'll have to try and figure out what the hell's wrong with the database language code. It's not pretty sometimes. Alright, that's the worst bit about it. Everything else on the web thing is really nice and helpful. But anyone got any questions about that? Okay, this is critical, this document. Do not, at the end of the project, say how many errors did I need to show. You shouldn't even be asking me that. You just need to do it. So if you're just like, oh, I've got a doozy, a really good one here that I've fixed, put it in there. That's the best thing to do. Okay, start off with a few lame ones, like Gittis said, with like a misaligned graphic, something like this. Gittis is talking about. I think let me just check I've fixed that. In fact, I'll turn all that stuff off because that graphics driver is not liking that at all. Right, I've fixed it. Right, so I'll just take the attract sprites off. Right, so my title text. This is how I define a sprite. Okay, I specify a texture. So if I look at my content, I've got a texture called base textures. That's what it looks like. Okay, so there's the title up there, game title, and there's my menu stuff that you could see on screen. And basically how it works is we just need to specify a rectangle, and we're telling the graphics card what part of the texture to actually draw on screen. Okay, so in here, that's where I do it. So I'm defining a frame for my sprite, and I say, right, it's the TX base texture, that part of the rectangle. So what I might have done is something weird. where I've not made it wide enough. So let's say I made it 341. Because I've either typed the number wrong or something like that. And it'll just chop it off. Oh, that's quite a nice clean chop. So, game tittle. Right, so I can show a screenshot of that, and then I can identify the code that's wrong. Okay, quite easily. Right, I'll stop that video. Let's get the edited copy of that. It'd be quicker to upload than it is to copy.